The Western perspective has often misconstrued Hindu culture, perpetuating a detached, mystical perception born out of Orientalist stereotypes. Such a limited view fails to capture the rich complexity and historical dynamics of Hindu society, which has always been an integral part of a global socio-political progression. Hollywood, significantly influenced by its European migrant founders, has often echoed these myopic perceptions in its portrayal of Hindus. This has led to a propagation of historical stereotypes rather than fostering a comprehensive, nuanced understanding of Hindu culture. Hollywood's representations have more reflected their creators' cultural biases than an informed appreciation of the history and culture of Hindu society. The history of Hindu stereotypical representation in Hollywood traces back to colonial India, when the narrative discourse was dictated by missionaries, anthropologists, and officials who presented Hindus as primitive and unsophisticated. These inaccurate depictions, framed within a colonial mindset, laid the groundwork for Hollywood's long-standing tendency to perpetuate these misconceptions about Hindu culture and society. Even with over 75 years of India's independence, post-colonial discourses in both Europe and North America persistently propagate themes that emphasize Western superiority. These narratives routinely portray Hindus as simple-minded, humorously naive, and socially inept or childlike. Conversely, they also frequently depict Hindus as sinister, malevolent, and antagonistic to Western principles and actions. The tradition of Hollywood's stereotyping of Hindu culture can be traced back to 1939, when the movie Ganga Din depicted Hindus as savages. The film features them as fervent worshippers of the goddess Kali, engaging in human sacrifices conducted under the oversight of an unhinged Hindu priest. The tradition of Hollywood's misrepresentation and stereotyping of Hinduism, unfortunately, did not cease with the passage of time. On the contrary, it has been perpetuated in multiple subsequent productions, highlighting Hollywood's persistent inclination to misinterpret and misrepresent Hindu culture and society. In Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, 1984, Hindus are depicted as savages indulging in the consumption of snakes, bats, and monkeys. A glaring misrepresentation occurs when a Hindu Maharaja offers his Western guests a meal of snakes and bats and a monkey's head as dessert. Movies such as 13 Women 1932 and Holy Smoke 1999 present a skewed characterization of Hindu gurus and sadhus, depicting them as engaging in seduction of white women. In Lara Croft Tomb Raider 2001, statues of Hanumanji were shown transforming into demons that assailed the movie's heroine. This protagonist, portrayed by Angelina Jolie, responds by eliminating these demons with firearms. In Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut, 1999, there is a scene that stands out. It's a scene of a sexual orgy taking place in an extravagant setting. What is peculiar is that these explicit activities are set against a soundtrack featuring Vedic chants, considered most sacred by Hindus. In The Party, 1968, an Indian doctor named Hrundi Bakshi is portrayed as an incompetent buffoon who blunders at every turn. The character, played by Peter Sellers, represents a stereotypical depiction of Indians, compounding the insult with the use of brown face makeup. Short Circuit, 1986, similarly depicts Fisher Stevens, a white actor, utilizing brown face makeup and putting on an exaggerated accent to play an Indian character. In the Harry Potter series, the Patil sisters, characters of Hindu descent, were shown wearing garish neon pink outfits, presenting a stereotypical Western perspective of Indian attire. This depiction portrays the Western belief that Hindu parents would typically dress their children in such overly bright and flashy clothing. In the television series The Big Bang Theory, the character Rajesh Kutharapalli, portrayed as a North Indian man from Delhi with a notably South Indian surname, presents an array of misconceptions about Indian culture. Movies such as Slumdog Millionaire 2008, Million Dollar Arm 2014, and The Darjeeling Limited 2007 often depict India through a yellow-tinted sepia filter, portraying it as a sprawling slum characterized by unhygienic conditions, crumbling infrastructure, and semi-clad children running amidst filth. These images, often accentuated with scenes of individuals partially submerged in human waste, present an overly narrow and skewed portrayal of India's societal landscape. A scene-filled episode called The Backwards Episode shows the characters traveling to India. The show generates laughs by focusing on cliches such as excessive heat, fear of using bathrooms, and unnecessary inclusion of elephants, further propagating stereotypes. HBO's The Sopranos exacerbated this trend, with the protagonist Anthony Soprano asking his daughter, "What do they teach in India? How to get diarrhea?" The Simpsons aired an episode titled Kiss Kiss Bang Bangalore in April 2006, which portrayed India as an exotic land filled with industrious workers idolizing the Western character Homer Simpson. Dispatched to India to train employees, Homer instigates the formation of a union akin to a colonial figure enlightening native people. This episode reiterates the white man's burden narrative, falsely implying Western culture's inherent superiority over Indian societal norms and practices. The 2017 film Basmati Blues, directed by Danny Barron and starring Brie Larson, once again propagates the idea of a white Westerner swooping in to rescue or civilize people from non-Western cultures. In the film, Larson plays a white scientist who travels to India to sell genetically modified rice to rural farmers, supposedly as a solution to their poverty. As the story unfolds, she becomes aware of her company's exploitation of the poor farmers, eventually choosing to align with them. This narrative reinforces the colonial stereotype of the Westerner as the heroic savior and the Hindu populace as the naive subjects in dire need of saving. No character in mainstream entertainment quite epitomized the perpetuation of racial stereotypes as Appu Nahasapimapitila from The Simpsons. This caricature of an Indian convenience store owner was a damaging stereotype. The controversial depiction was so problematic that it necessitated the 2017 documentary, The Problem with Appu, which meticulously dissected the offensive racial stereotypes and microaggressions inherent in the character's representation. Appu's character was delivered with an exaggerated Indian accent, providing humor at the expense of the Hindu community. The portrayal eventually sparked significant backlash, leading to Hank Azaria, the actor who provided his voice to Appu, issuing an apology for his participation in reinforcing the stereotype. Azaria's decision to step down from the role acknowledged the insensitivity and misrepresentation in such characterizations. With India poised to become the world's fourth largest economy by 2024, Hollywood's portrayal of Hindus and India may increasingly resort to monolithic depictions such as presenting India solely as a Hindu country and perpetuating stereotypes like Brahmins being portrayed as oppressors or Indians as timid nerds. The industry might also exaggerate socio-economic disparities, crafting narratives around a manufactured income divide, leading to a distorted and simplified representation of the country's immensely diverse and complex society. Despite its recent strides towards wokeness, Hollywood remains tainted by a deep-seated prejudice, creating a culture that often fosters stereotypes. This industry, built on storytelling and representation, unfortunately needs a significant reset, one that goes beyond surface-level acknowledgements of diversity. Given this context, it's important for the Hindu community to approach Hollywood's portrayal of their culture with caution. The expectation that Hollywood will suddenly shift towards a more reasonable and objective representation of Hindus is, at this point, a hope far removed from reality.